Hello, welcome to TJ13 TV's look at Liberty Media's roadmap for Formula One for 2021 and beyond. I'm joined today, for the first time this year, by TJ13 Editor-in-Chief AJ. But AJ, before we get to the proposals for the future, what did you make of the Bahrain Grand Prix last weekend?
Good to see you, Charlie. It's been a long, wet and cold winter here in Blighty. But anyway, answer to your question. For those of us who are interested in something other than Mercedes dominance and Lewis Hamilton win after win, then I would suggest that the first two races of the season have given us a lot to hope for. And next week in China, I think Hamilton's under quite a bit of pressure to get one over on Vettel. Otherwise, we might see dummies being spat out.
Well, that would be entertaining, but anyway, the big media story in Bahrain was about the future of Formula One. Liberty Media issued a press statement, a kind of roadmap, outlining how they see Formula One for 2021 and beyond. But what amazed me was the subsequent peace and happiness and love that seemed to spread across the paddock. No Christian Horner dummies being spat, no Marchione thumping the table and threatening a Ferrari withdrawal, and even Toto Wolff was agreeable to the introduction of more standard specification parts as the way to go in cost-cutting.
Hold on there, Charlie. I love your optimism, but that was just Toto Wolff offering up a sop to sort of impress the fans. There's a large battle royal politic going on behind the scenes in Formula One at the moment. And Toto can't be seen to be objecting to change and every change that's proposed which may hurt Mercedes' capabilities to win. So mark my words, Toto and Ferrari's Sergio Marchionne are going to be doing everything in their power to slow down change, to minimise the amount of change and keep the advantage that they have.
Well, far be it from me to suggest that's a cynical viewpoint, AJ, but why do you say that?
Well, I think it was pretty obvious from Toto's comments on the subject of the capping of spend or cost cap that he was going to defend Mercedes' personnel structure to the hilt. And that's some 1,500 strong people working between the engine and the car factories in Brixworth and Brackley. And the budget's like 350, 400 million to support that. So clearly the idea of a cost cap at 150 million plus drivers plus this plus the rest, it's just he's not having it.
But doesn't Toto Wolff have a point? Isn't it bad for Formula One and obviously the people involved to just cull hundreds of jobs?
Well, as Ross Brawn astutely observed, as the smaller teams get a bigger share of the pie, then they'll be able to recruit more personnel. And as the bigger teams are forced to cut their spend, then obviously the personnel will become distributed amongst the midfield teams. So the F1 spend will be similar in totality, just spread differently across the teams. But twice Toto said he ridiculed the idea of 150 million as a cost cap for Mercedes, saying that it would have to be at least 250 million. That was more likely.
Which actually means 350 plus.
Absolutely, and therefore little change from the status quo. In my humble opinion, I think Liberty Media have utterly failed at the first hurdle. They appear to have suggested this spend of 150 million and then stupidly allowed for add-ons like drivers' salaries and even worse, marketing.
I guess what you're saying, AG, is that so long as the big boys are spending several times more than the rest of the field, Formula One will look pretty much the same.
Yeah, that about nails it, Charlie. The reality is F1 at the present time is a two-tier series, one for the billion-dollar global companies and another for the rest.
So how do we solve this? Can't Liberty and the FIA just make a ruling on it?
Well, for me, I'd kick out or force out via a straitjacket on spend a proper cap, Ferrari and Mercedes, and Red Bull if they want to go as well. That said, I don't think, given the fact that Red Bull is struggling to win under the current structures, that they're going to object as much as maybe the big two. But the days are over where the rest of F1 can compete with these global marketing brand budgets. It's just impossible and it's killing the sport.
Well, one point of interest is the fairly detail-light content that was the Liberty Media statement, which is that the driver's skill must be the predominant factor in the performance of the car.
With the greatest respect to Liberty, that's a pipe dream, Charlie. And I suspect Ross Brawn is playing lip service to the monumental mustachioed Chase Carey on this one. F1 has never been about the best driver per se. It's always been the fact that the car contributes probably something like 70 to 80% of the performance.
I suppose in simple terms, what we need is the differential between the teams to be smaller, and then we get more wheel-to-wheel racing.
Absolutely, and this can be done by either having a spec series like F2 or the old GP2, GP3, or by allowing freedom or an amount of freedom in car design, but ensuring that the spending differential is not hundreds of percentage points different between the top and the bottom teams.
Well, let's hope the F1 rule makers can take a leaf out of the book of the people who revamped the current MotoGP regulations. In their first race of the season in Qatar, the top 15 MotoGP bikes were separated by less than 25 seconds, so it can be done. Okay, AJ, let's whistle through the other key points in Liberty's roadmap document and hear your succinct opinion on whether each is deliverable.
No problem, Charlie. Shoot away.
First up, engines. They've been a big bone of contention in this V6 era. They're incredibly expensive and too dominant a part of the whole driver car package. Liberty say they want cheaper, simpler and louder power units, remaining road relevant, and new power unit rules attractive to new manufacturers.
And I believe they can deliver that. Road relevance simply means hybrid. All cars by 2025 will be at least hybrid. But the way to stop the engines becoming ridiculously expensive and complicated, and to relegate their importance back in the mix with chassis and aero, is simply to cap the amount that the manufacturers of the power units are allowed to charge their customers. There's no way Mercedes are going to spend 500 million again on R&D for the 2021 power units if they are only allowed to charge each customer 3, 4, 5 million pounds a year.
But if we also shorten the period for the next power unit to, say, 5 years before the one after that, wouldn't that also reduce the vast amount of spend that a manufacturer will risk?
It would definitely. But the PU regs also need to ensure that there's no favouritism from the manufacturer and the works teams over and above the customer teams, as they do now. But the issue that's the current power units have become, I believe, will be sorted for 2021. I think Liberty are more than capable of making that happen.
Right, next up in the Liberty roadmap was cost cutting, which we've already covered, and you think will fail unless Mercedes and Ferrari leave the sport. So on to revenue distribution. Liberty want a fairer model, but will still respect historic performance payments.
They can deliver on that too. As with spend, it's about reducing the ridiculous differential between the top and the bottom teams. I mean, Ferrari will still get their little bribe of $40 million a year to stop them, spitting their dummy out. Whether they will or not, who knows? But the bottom teams should be getting at least double or treble the percentage portion that they've been awarded. The days should be over, really, when a team is dependent on sponsorship to cover the costs, a simple cost of building, maintaining and attending the 21, 24 or 25 races that will be each season.
The penultimate category covered in the roadmap was sporting and technical rules and regulations. Here goes. We must make cars more raceable to increase overtaking opportunities. Engineering technology must remain a cornerstone, but driver skill must be the predominant factor in the performance of the car. The cars must and will remain different from each other and maintain performance differentiators like aerodynamics, suspensions and power unit performance. However, we believe areas not relevant for fans need to be standardised.
So, Liberty Media are ruling out a spec series F2 GP3, which is great news for anyone who's been following Formula One for a long period of time. So, and we've discussed the element of driver skill. So that leaves making the cars more raceable and increasing overtaking. Well, on this, I just think that given the current governance of Formula One, and the ability of the teams to veto these kinds of changes, this isn't going to be possible for Liberty to achieve. In fact, there was a technical working group meeting in Bahrain where Liberty had asked the teams to change the rules for 2019 or agree rules for 2019, which would simplify the front wings. The idea being that the cars would then be able to follow more closely. Surprise, surprise, the big teams and their allies kicked it out.
Which I guess is why Liberty's last point on the roadmap was Formula One governance.
Yes, and I'm surprised the F1 media broadly missed this. This is the biggie. The much-hated F1 strategy group has got to go, along with the voting power of the teams and even the sponsors like Pirelli. At present, F1 rules can't be easily changed, and I find myself in agreement, unusually, with the now affable Mr. Christian Horner, when he says, here's a set of rules from the FIA, from Liberty. Sign up or bugger off.
So there we have it. Formula One's bright future may or may not, depending on your outlook, be just around the corner. Thank you for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you later in the week with a preview of the 2018 Chinese Grand Prix.